Okay. Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us, and apologies for the technology glitches. My name is Linda Bartram. I am the first vice president of AEBC, as most of you know, and you're helping to present this event this morning. I'd like to make a land acknowledgement first of all. I live in the territory of the Lekwungen speaking persons, the Esquimalt, Songhees, and Wisanic nations, and we are grateful to work, play, and present this presentation today from their lands. And I live in Victoria, British Columbia. I'd like everybody to put yourselves on mute, please. We'll have a question and answer session at the end of today's chat with Louis, but I would like to minimize the amount of background noise, so please put yourselves on mute. And we'll do questions and answers, as I say, at the end. I'm going to conduct today's session with Louis as a sort of interview. I'll be asking him some questions. I did ask the membership if they had any questions to submit them to me. So I've put together 6 questions, and I'm sure there'll be others that'll come out of the session, and we'll entertain those at the end. As you know, today's session is being recorded, and please watch in Monday Morsels for instructions on how to get to that recording once it's available. I don't know quite where it'll be put, so watch Monday Morsels. Okay, so I'd like to welcome Louis Greco to our session this morning. Louis has been blind all his life, and he is a lifetime member of AEBC. He's an expert Braille reader and user of assistive technology, including mobile devices. His community experience has been in often in leadership positions, and this is included the United Way of Calgary, the Kinsman Club of Calgary, Unionville Lions Club, 2 Rotary organizations, Canadian Information Processing Society. Don't know what that is. He might tell us. Louis has also been active on boards of other blindness consumer groups. Most recently, he holds the position of Manager of Regulatory Affairs with the CNIB, and one of his mandates has been to curating the Clearing Our Path publication, CNIB's publication, which is a publication that lays out the accessibility requirements for persons who are blind and low vision in regards to interior and external design. I met Louis when he was the CNIB representative for the Consumer Access Group. He's no longer with us, and we miss him. But he has acted as a resource since he's moved on, and so we know who to call if we want to know about all sorts of standards that that we work with here in Canada. He's quite knowledgeable on that in that area. So, Louis, welcome.
Thank you, Linda. Good to talk to you again.
Yeah, you too. So I've put together, as I say, 6 questions, and we'll just start a chat and a conversation. I may have some follow-up questions as we go, and please feel free to expand on them as much as you see fit. We have a little bit shrunken time, but we will try to get the vast majority of these questions dealt with in the next half an hour or so, and then we'll have some time for questions. So Louis, how would you define what you believe is meant by advocacy?
Well, I'm glad you put the how I believe part in that sentence, because like most things, it depends on who you are, and it depends what the context that you're working within. For me, advocacy is trying to convince someone, be that a person or an organization, to do things differently. Typically, in my life, both as a citizen at large and as someone working as a professional in the advocacy arena, most of my advocacy work has been around trying to change a policy or a practice or an attitude around accommodating me, aka someone who's blind. I do want to say though that while that sounds really um, high-reaching and perhaps ambitious and idealistically, advocacy doesn't necessarily, nor should it be, trying to impact or affect systemic change all the time. So how you're treated by the municipality or your bank or at the hospital or at the local restaurant, whatever. A lot of times, and in fact, it's my view, and I'll talk to this a little bit later on. It's my view that if you can't convince the people around you who make up your life and know you and hopefully have some empathy and respect for who you are as a person, aka a brother, a sister, a spouse, a parent, that they need to accommodate your disability, or that they need to do things a little bit differently in order that you can participate and contribute in a meaningful way for you, then then forget it. Don't bother trying to change the world. So yeah, advocacy means a lot of things and means different things depending on the context that you're talking about.
So you're sort of saying start with those around you who know you best, and practice your skills on those who are close to you.
Yes, because let's be honest, they're going to be the ones that have the greatest impact on your day-to-day life. Um, I can't think of an example off the top of my head, but I'm sure all of us on the call today have experiences with our immediate network around things that they could do differently that would make our life easier. And they're an easy mark. They're an easy target. You can get it wrong, and the consequences are not going to be horribly impactful. Yeah.
Okay. So, how, in your experience, has advocacy changed, Louis, in the last 20 years, and say in the last 10 years since we've had the nothing about us without us sort of idea, and maybe even in the last 5 years since COVID?
Well, that's a good question, and I have two responses to that. My first one is there are now more um, legal instruments at our disposal that we can leverage. We have the Canadian uh, rights of Charter of Rights and Freedoms. We have the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. In many provinces across Canada, we have or will shortly have accessibility legislation. So those are the road signs. Those are the things that say, hey, society is taking note. Governments are investing resources and and legal capacity around affirming the fact that things needed to change. The other part, and sort of as a follow-up to that, I think more people get it now than they did 30 years ago. I had a conversation with an instructor at at a Calgary technical school when I went back to do a second degree. And he said to me, it's not my job to find somebody to help you scribe your calculus exam. That's your problem. Today, uh, that conversation would never happen because the institutional learning or the institutions recognize their obligation to provide equal accommodations to people with different learning styles. Um, I think society as a whole, so Betty or Joe on the street kind of gets it. They see cut curbs and wheelchair ramps and they say, oh yeah, people with disabilities, that helps them. I think a lot of them still have no idea about what TWSBIs or tactile warning surface indicators are, or APSs. I've heard some people say that you'll be standing next to someone at an APS, the thing beeps and they think that, oh yeah, that's so blind people can drive. Okay, so understanding and awareness maybe isn't as rich as we want to admit it. I'm just reading my notes here.
Yeah, I'm wondering about, sort of the whole idea that everybody wants to consult with us these days. And that's sort of come about since sort of the nothing about us without us idea. And
So
uh,
let me speak to that and just say this. What have those consultations changed? I would say precious little. I would say, and again, this is my opinion only. I should have prefaced my comments at the beginning that everything I say today is Louis Greco's views. It's not CNIB's view. While I do speak for CNIB, today I'm speaking as a person who's blind, which precedes my employment with CNIB and will exist when I'm no longer employed with CNIB. So I'm going to say to you that sure, we're consulted, but I think we're still having some of the same challenges. We have to struggle to get alternate format statements from our bank. Utility companies, if you want your electric bill or your gas bill in a format that you can read, forget it. If you want an insurance document from from your home insurance, or if you happen to own a car, if you want to make a claim on any of those, forget it. If you happen to be someone that has investments and you want to review your portfolio, I I have I have investments with several organizations, not that any of them amount to a hell of a lot, but every single one of them, without exception, has probably the worst documents to try and read. And sure, I could fight the good fight and say you have to do better. And I probably will when I really need to. But my point about how advocacy has changed, I'm going to say to you, Linda, that in many ways, unfortunately, it hasn't. We're still having some of the same conversations that we were 40 years ago when I left university. So while there's definitely been significant changes in the landscape, especially within Canada, I would say to you that a lot of those changes are symbolic only, um, and that real meaningful change, I I don't see a lot of evidence on that.
And my next question was, why is advocacy so important for us still today? And obviously, you've answered that. It's still important because we still have a long way to go. And I think probably we, in the blindness community particularly, this seems to be the case. I'm not sure that other disability groups are, pushing against the tide as much as we appear to be. What do you think about that?
I would say that we're probably the most complacent of all the disability groups. Look at the deaf community. Look at autism, the families with autistic children. The recognition that mental health has as a societal challenge. Look at physical access to buildings and public places. You wouldn't conceive, or a property manager wouldn't conceive for a minute that they should build a new premise and not have automatic door openers and barrier-free access. They wouldn't build a 2-story building, never mind a high rise, without an elevator. But yet, when it comes to wayfinding strategies for people who are blind, um, uh, um, you know, that's not there. It's always a conversation. So if we're going to see the things that we as a segment of society want to have in order to make our life better, we can't put down the cross. We've got to stick to our guns. It's really important that we continue to have conversations, even though the utility of those conversations sometimes can seem futile. As soon as we drop our guard and walk away from the table, we might as well roll up in our cocoon and go home. So we've got to keep it on.
Yeah, so with the complacency, which I agree that that's one of our biggest issues, is there's very few of us that are fighting the good fight. And we need to be able to, expand that to to others in our community. And so my next question is, how can someone who doesn't see themselves as an advocate really start to do advocacy? I
Okay.
mean, how does somebody who's really not sure of themselves and not comfortable necessarily with confrontation, how does that person start down this road?
So let me just speak to what was this? Let me just speak to question 3, just one more point on that. My final thought on, let's see here. So my final thought on why advocacy is important. I'm going to put this out there for people to think about, and I'm going to say to you, after everything that I just said about sticking to our guns and fighting the good fight and not walking away from the table, I'm going to say to you, if people were really struggling, if there were real and persistent barriers that we still face as a segment of society, would there be such a degree of um, what's the word, of apathy? Why do we struggle to get people involved? Why is it so hard to get blind folks to write letters, to pick up the phone, to go to meetings, uh, to do those things? And I'm going to say to you that the reason that it's so hard to get people involved is because, for the most part, people think they have it good enough. They have food in their closet, in their cupboard. They have a roof over their home. Most of us, we have to recognize that there are some people who aren't that lucky. We can go to the doctor, most of us, if we're sick. Um, we can get around, whether that be on your own or with paratransit or with a family member or friend. So what else is there? Obviously, I don't subscribe to that thought. If I did, I wouldn't be working for CNIB, and nor would I have joined AEBC 15 years ago. But something to think about. Go down to your. I'm just navigating here.
Yeah, the next question was
Yeah,
in regards
how?
to, how does somebody start becoming an advocate? Where do they start?
So I talked about this at the beginning, and I said start advocating with those that are your immediate network, your family, your friends, your colleagues, whether it be they school colleagues or coworkers, whatever. Try to influence change with your immediate circle. If you can't convince your immediate network to look at things in a different way, to make accommodations, and I don't care what those accommodations are, whether it's not turning off the light, whether it's keeping the cupboard clean, whatever, right? Pick your battle. If you can't convince those people around you to make those changes, how do you expect you're going to be able to convince um, the local, the local restaurant that you can bring your guide dog with you, that you really need, that it really is important that you have documents in a format that you can read. So that's what I would say to somebody getting started. Start at home, start in your local community or your local network. Practice on those people. And the reason I say practice on those people is because if you get it wrong, by getting it wrong, it simply means that you're not successful. You can keep trying. And eventually you'll get it right. And once you get it right, that will build confidence. And then you can expand the domain that you want to try and influence.
Yeah, I think of the push the chair into the table, please, when you get up, so I don't walk into it next time I go past the table. And how sometimes, that is just a request to accommodate your needs and isn't a big ask. And you may have to ask a few times, but eventually, hopefully you get there. And that's advocacy.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So to help us along this road a little bit, we've decided we're going to do this, and we're maybe going to take it on in a little bit more of a formal way, and looking at, sort of speaking to, say, somebody out there in the community. So what are some of the 2 or 3 do's and don'ts that we should keep in mind when we're advocating?
Okay. I've written these down here. So the first point that I have is be specific. Focus on one thing at a time. You're not going to change the world with one conversation or with one letter or with one, personal campaign. Pick the hill that you're going to die on today. Pick the fire that you're going to light under someone's butt to do something, and be laser focused on that. The second point is do your homework. What are other people, some of whom may have similar challenges, others who may not? So find allies. When you do that, you'll quickly discover that while you think you may be the only person in the world bearing that cross, that others are bearing a similar cross. It may not look the same, it may not feel the same, but there's strength in numbers. The last thing, so the last point, don't quit the first time you hear no or we can't do that. And I'm as guilty of this as anyone. You make a request, you make a suggestion to someone who you're trying to influence, and they throw up their hands and say, I have no idea how we can do that, or that's impossible, or there's no way we can afford that. Don't accept that. If you firmly believe that what you're asking for is A, doable, and B, reasonable, and C, will make a difference to you, and thereby by default benefit others, keep fighting the good fight. Keep hang in there. Change directions. Obviously, who was it? Some famous psychologist said that if you keep doing the same thing over and over again and expect a different result, that's insanity. So if a letter writing campaign doesn't work and a phone call doesn't make a difference, go back to the drawing board, come up with a different strategy, do something different, talk to somebody different, find allies, maybe go to the paper, maybe don't go to the paper, but persist, because if you don't, then again, you're lost.
So be specific, find allies, and be persistent.
Be persistent. Yeah.
Very good. Very good advice. Okay, the last thing today Louis is going to do is share a specific advocacy issue that he's been working on for the last little while. I don't know anything about it, but it's to do with Air Canada.
Okay, so I'm going to make a request, and that request is that we stop recording. The reason I say that is because Air Canada has lots of money and lots of lawyers, and if I say anything that that they don't like, it could come back and haunt me, and I don't have any more money for legal fees.
So if folks who are listening to the recording wish to speak with you about this on a one-on-one basis, then they can connect with you? They
most certainly can. I'm easy to find. I may not tell you what you want to know because of the.
Okay, fair. Okay, so thank you very much for all of those words of wisdom, Louis. And I'd now like to open it up to the members to ask their questions. Please raise your hand, and Marcy's going to monitor the raised hands. Are you there, Marcy?
Oh, yeah, I am here and I'm just waiting for people to start raising their hands. Come on, everybody. Oh, Chantal, you're the first person.
Go ahead,
Unmute
Chantal.
yourself. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Hi, sorry about that. When we were talking about basically persistence to continue to advocate on your behalf if there's something you want to do or something you want to happen, it just reminded me of a scenario that one of the panelists talked about from Blind Beginnings that I listened to recently, and I think it's quite appropriate here. Sometimes you really have to put yourself, and I mean literally, put yourself in a situation where you can teach others right at that moment that whatever you're suggesting is possible. This young woman wanted to participate in a hiking climbing experience that a group in her community were putting together. But when they found out she was blind, they told her that this wouldn't be good for her, that, you know, she might hold up others and she probably wouldn't be able to do it, when in fact she was probably more fit than some of them who actually attended, she said, from what she knew. But in the end, she bowed out. She thought to herself, yeah, I'd like to be able to teach them that I can do it, but why go somewhere where I'm not wanted? So sometimes it's a real letdown when you're actually trying to partake in something. And my goodness, what if you did make a mistake? What if something did happen? But would it have happened, or could it happen to anybody else who was sighted in that group? So it takes a lot of lot of guts, a lot of convincing that you want to put yourself out there sometimes. And I suspect that maybe following the example of others maybe could help. But Louis, have you found yourself in that situation? I'm sure, through your lifetime that you've inserted yourself in that position. I know I've done it and thought, you said I couldn't, but here I am, and I'm going to show you.
Yes,
But you're taking that chance. It's like a real dilemma, isn't it?
it is. I joined a ski club when
Oh,
I
there
was
you go.
living in Calgary, and I literally walked in off the street. I didn't know a soul. I'd never joined a ski club in my life, and I put down my $35 and I said, I'd like to join. And I got lucky because the the people that happened to be in the office that particular day when I paid my membership, I said, I'd need somebody to guide me, and I'll probably need some help when we go on trips to find my way around. And they just naturally said, yeah, no problem. And it was awesome. Best 3 years of my life until I left Calgary and moved to Ontario. I went skiing probably 10 times on weekend trips. Um, um, I went windsurfing and water skiing during the summer with the group, and they were all great. So sometimes it does work. And Chantel, you are absolutely right. Sometimes you just have to say, do I really want to be a part of a group that is so reticent to let me participate? And yeah, stuff does go wrong, and unfortunately, oftentimes people will say, well, it's because you're blind. No, it's not because I'm blind. It's because I'm unlucky today and I happen to trip and fall, and it's nobody's fault. It's just sometimes stuff happens. But yeah, you're absolutely right.
So picking your battles, I think, is, because I'm sure most of us could encounter, half a dozen things every time we go out. At least that's the way I find.
Yeah,
There
exactly.
always seems to be something. So
Yeah.
pick your battles, pick the ones that are maybe going to be, have the biggest impact in the long run for you, or the ones that you think you possibly can win. And the other piece I think is safety in numbers. I know, sort of dealing with things when you're not the only one, finding somebody else, the ally again, who has the same issue, and perhaps neither of you are prepared to address it as individuals, but together you can you can face it. So pick your battles, but don't necessarily give up if it's something you really want to do. Find somebody else who's in the same boat.
Yep.
Thank you, Chantel. Yeah.
Okay, and next is Hilton.
Hi, Louis. So Louis, my question is a little bit different. So I'm retired, so work, retire, repeat, and I spend most of my day on advocacy, and I receive requests or I see requests. Could you work on this? Could you work on that? And every time I turn around, it seems like there's another advisory committee that either is asking for my time or can you find somebody in your network who could do this? Where would I be spending, and including the more personal ones, can you advocate with the drugstore to have, readable labels, barcode labels? Where would I be best spending my time to have the highest impact? With the caveat, like you, persistent. I don't take no for an answer. I'm ready to, work at it for a couple of years. Where would I be best spending my time? Would it be on municipal advisory committees, transportation places, individual advocacy? Should I just pick something that I'm just having the most fun at? I'm sure you've done so many things. how could I have the most impact with
What
the amount of time I have?
what matters to you?
Making a difference that at some point in a year or two or three, I'll be at somewhere and something will be working for a person with low or no vision that didn't work before. That's what matters. What it is, I don't know exactly, whether it's an automatic door at a particular building or an automatic door at every building and every airport. I don't think the magnitude of it, I'm not willing to go to the drugstore and advocate for readable labels. It's like just too small, not enough of an impact. So it's not so much what it matters to me, it's to have the biggest impact, whether, it matters. That's what matters to me, to have the biggest impact, to use leverage what I have to make the biggest impact.
I don't see a problem with that, Hilton. In fact, if that's how you prioritize stuff, then be prepared to say no to some of those requests that you get in. And in fact, to many of the requests that you get in.
Mm-hmm.
You can't be all things to all people.
Mm-hmm.
And if you try to do that, you're going to be nothing to everyone.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, again, we said it earlier today, pick your battles.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If you're doing it on behalf of Hilton,
mm-hmm.
then what matters to Hilton? What is it that really gets your goat? What really makes you frustrated and angry?
Mm-hmm.
And fight those battles.
Mm-hmm.
If other things are, well, this would be nice to have, but I don't really know much about it, then don't be afraid to say no.
Okay.
I get requests probably 2 or 3 a week, like
Like,
you said, on advisory committees and consultations, and I look at them and I say, yeah, okay, this, I have the mission that the organization has to sort of balance against my needs. But if it doesn't fit within the mission, then we say thanks, but no thanks. If it fits within the mission, but we don't have time or resources, or we won't be able to get to it for 3 months, then we say to them, can't help you, go find somebody else. And never apologize for saying no. I don't have time, I don't have interest. Go find somebody else. They're consulting with us as a community of persons with disabilities, not because they're trying to solve our problems, but because they have an obligation, be it legal, moral, or other, to change the way that they do business. It's not our problem, it's their problem.
I understand.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I like that flip side thing. It's really their problem and we're there to facilitate it, not to really push them. They should feel enough pressure from legislation and litigation and all those other things. Yeah. Okay. Thanks very much, Lou. Appreciate it.
Oh, okay, and I was just about to say I have no hands, but then Dean's popped up out of nowhere. So Dean, go ahead.
Hi, Louis. In your answer to one of the questions, you talked about apathy, and one of the things that we're finding as a group, and I not trying to age anybody here, but I looked at the participant list, and I would say the majority of the people on this list are above 50, and we're finding issues or trying to find a way to get to the younger crowd, anywhere from, let's say, the 18-year-old up to the 49-year-old. And I'm just wondering if you have any advice on how to get through that to that group who, when I've had contact with them, it's almost walks into your definition of apathy, or that they just don't want to get involved. And I'm just wondering how you would approach that.
Oh, I have no idea, Dean. It is a struggle. I think all of us today probably live by the saying that we walk on the shoulders of giants. So the people who came before us, that's where I draw a lot of my strength from is, the mentors, the John Rays, the Chris Starks, the Donna Jordans, those people who have done more than I could ever imagine. I think kids don't have, or sorry, let me rephrase it. I think younger people don't have that same value base. I think to some extent their realities are very different than ours were when we were at that stage in life. I think to some extent maybe there's more in place for them, so they don't perceive a need to get involved. I don't know. If I come across the magic formula, I'll shout it from the hilltops. But as of right now, I just have no idea.
I think you touched on it, Louis, when you spoke earlier about the fact that, maybe we don't get involved because things aren't really that bad. And maybe they aren't really that bad for students, or if they do come across as a single issue that is really bad, they they don't have any basis in which to work with that, to actually deal with that. I mean, that's when we would like them to come to us. If you can't get accessible reading materials at university, which is one I've heard about, or you're having trouble with Uber picking you up, that's another one that young people, or that, being refused of your guide dog, and they need to connect themselves with an organization like that who's had some experience and can help them through that. But I think for the most part, on a day-to-day basis with technology, even though it is frustrating and it's changing all the time, at least we have it and we can do most things. I mean, I don't know, has the iPhone made people more complacent? Perhaps.
Maybe maybe saying that people don't have it hard enough is the wrong way. Maybe
Mhm.
another way of spinning that would be is people don't know what their true potential is. They don't realize how different things could be if they were to step up and advocate for themselves. Maybe that would be a more
Yeah.
positive spin on that.
Yeah, and that's a good point. They have accepted the status quo as being okay,
Yeah.
not knowing that things could be that much better. And
Yeah.
I think, we don't realize as blind people, sometimes we don't always realize what we're missing or what we actually can't do, or what the sighted world is actually able to take advantage of, because we're just not even aware of it.
Yeah, and we have John. Johnny O.
Okay,
your turn.
good. I couldn't find the raised hand, but was under what's it called?
Reactions.
Reactions, yeah, but I found it. So okay, my question has got to do with from our organizational point of view. And I just think about like all the things we do that probably the general public doesn't know. Do they know that 20 people can go on a Zoom meeting and that kind of a thing, and or other things we can do that the public would never think we'd ever be able to do? And do you think our organizations, or like our advocacy organizations, could get some sort of public service announcements, just little kind of like almost tweets, but saying that, oh, did you know that we do this? Do you know we do that? And in places like CNIB, because I remember they used to have things about you could go read about how to treat a blind people, and how they're supposed to take your elbow and all that kind of stuff, right? But I wonder if we can do a little bit more about saying what we're all actually doing now that people don't know about, and if we can get that a bit more, then of course, especially our organization, that would be good, because then people could, then we could leave a publicity place where people could talk to us and say, and we can expand on what we're doing, and I mean, how many people know that Marcy, manages an organization and all the technology goes along with it, right? So, um, and I'm just wondering what we can do that way to be more involved with the public, because we seem to be kind of internalized a lot of the time, rather than letting the public know what we can do and what we can't do and why we can't do it, for various reasons. Okay, I guess I'll leave it there for now.
I'll
So-
speak to that, Louis, if you like, as to what we are doing as an organization, and then you can perhaps speak to it as well. That okay?
Sure.
Yeah. So we, John, have applied for a grant, a NOW grant. That's the National Accessibility Awareness Week, and that's exactly what our grant application was to address. To do some myth busting and to do it through little PW, what do you call them? Public awareness, a
Public
public
service
awareness
announcement,
campaign.
as they used to
Yeah,
call it.
yeah, exactly. So stay tuned, because if we get that funding, there will be some, and we will be hiring, professionals to actually produce this for us, and hopefully put some sort of a public awareness campaign together, and that would be happening next May. So we have thought of that, and we're moving towards that, and hopefully we'll get the funding. Hopefully we'll hear it's federal funding, so we don't know, and hopefully we'll hear by the end of the year. Louis, do you want to address that one as well?
You just did, Linda.
Okay.
So John, to answer your question, tell your story. I know that the blindcanadians.ca website, there's tons of resources there. When I was active on the board, I think just before or after I was on the board, there was some short videos about employment, I think. They were really good. Social media, it takes a skill, one which I sadly lack terribly, but I'm sure there's people within the organization, within the Blind Canadians group, who can leverage social media. That's probably one way of drawing in younger people, Dean. But leverage those platforms. You guys and gals do have stories, and I hope you're successful with your NAW grant. I think that would be awesome. But if you're not, look for other opportunities, look for other funders, foundations and service clubs and whatever, to try and maximize the impact that you can have by telling your stories about the things that we all do every day. And it doesn't have to be rock climbing or downhill skiing or sailing or anything. Quite seriously, I think a lot of times people still get blown away when you say to them, "Oh yeah, I got to the dentist office on my own. I walked here today, or I took the bus." It's kind of sad, but if those are the stories that we need to tell as a community to try and change attitudes, then those are the stories that we need to tell to change attitudes.
Yeah, it's just because they they just they're not aware. I mean, a lot of people just think, how could a blind person ever use an iPhone? That's just, because I just think of what the technology, but it could be anything else too, right?
Yeah.
But everyday things that we take for granted, and even the fact that we use, an iPhone for email, for example, the biggest thing it does for us is get rid of some of the barriers, because a blind person can send an email to a sighted person and they wouldn't know the person is blind, and vice versa. And just because we have this intermediary called technology that makes that happen.
Yeah. We at CNIB land, we often hear about young mothers who their ability to raise a child as a person who's blind is questioned. Even even though they may be in a stable relationship, sometimes with a partner who's also blind, sometimes sometimes their partner is not, and sometimes they're a single mom. So their ability to, to raise a child is questioned by, by the authorities. And I know there are people on this call, I won't name them, but I know there are people on this call who have successfully raised both children who are blind and sighted kids, and they've lived to tell about it. Their kids have gone on to be successful. They've lived the journey that families live, and yet, people don't get it. So yeah, tell the story. Tell the story as often as you can. Don't worry about if it's not sexy. Don't worry about if it's not, if it's not polished. Look at YouTube. I mean, the amount of content that gets put up onto YouTube every minute is mind-boggling. I guarantee you a lot of it is crap. So the bar is set quite low. And I know that just, Linda and Marcia and other folks on your board have skills and professionalism that would put some of the, the YouTubers to shame. So you have the capacity, you have the skills, you definitely have the technology. So yeah, tell your story.
And that's John was the last hand, so. Oh,
Okay.
sorry.
Oh,
That always is the way, isn't it, though? I just, Pat, you're.
Okay, I think one of the things is, and you know what, okay, get my hand lowered. One of the things is that we almost have to show people, or people don't realize, they think that difficulties and problems during daily life and accessing different things is just the way it is. So they don't know what to say they're having difficulty with. The other thing, and how to get around it. The other thing is, and I know this is a bad word to some people, but history. A lot of people, most people, young people today don't know the history of where we came from. How did it happen in the 1970s and 80s, et cetera, et cetera? Where did it start from? And you can't kind of say the word history in a way, because you know, sometimes that turns people off, but it's almost like saying, okay, how did we get here? How is it that you're having this difficulty? What happened? How is it that you solved this difficulty? What happened to make it possible for you to solve that difficulty? And peer support.
mhm.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pat. Anybody else? Last chance.
No hands.
Okay, thanks, Marcy. Well, Louis, we'd like to really thank you for this very informative and I think very honest discussion about advocacy. We will be having more sessions in regards to advocacy as time goes on into the new year. This is sort of like our first one, I guess. And we'd like to thank you again for coming in and sharing your experiences and your expertise with us.
My pleasure. I hope it was helpful. And if one person walks away with something that they can use tomorrow, then my work here is done, as they say.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Marcy, you
Stay
can
well,
turn off-
everybody.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, everybody. Marcy, turn off the record.